Good morning, good noon, good afternoon, good evening, good night. It's your Linda here again to bring you the new episode of Opera Wears. Well, I said I'll probably upload the new episode about Orfeo and Eurydice on Tuesday, but anyway, I was sick again. Well, unsurprisingly enough, I'm always sick for whatever reason. I wrote part of the script while standing outside of the stage door of my opera, and I was there for probably an hour and a half till Anthony walks out. Well, that's very sad. Well, compared to a Nino, Orpheus and Eurydice gives me a kind of like a bright weekend back. I have to say, after the aria Give Favos in the Eurydice, I heard the longest round of pause I ever experienced at the Met is a minute and 30 seconds straight that the conductor has to cut the pause and start to make everything continue. To conclude, Orpheus and Eurydice is a pivotal work in the history of opera, representing Christopher Wilhelm Gluck's innovative reforms that aim to simplify opera seria and enhance its dramatic impact. Premiered in 1762 at the Burg Theater in Vienna, the opera emphasized emotional depth and dramatic hilarity over the ornate and complex music typical of the genre at the time. The opera's lasting influence can be seen in the work of composers like Mozart, Beethoven, and Wagner, who adopted elements of Gluck's approach to achieve a greater dramatic cohesion and musical simplicity. I believe everyone may or may not at least heard the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice before. It's basically just about Orpheus, who is a bard, and his wife, Eurydice. Eurydice stepped on a venomous snake and was bitten. Then she died from the poison. So Orpheus traveled to the underworld, and the god of underworld was persuaded by him so that he allows Eurydice to return to the living world, but with one condition. Orpheus must not look back at Eurydice until they have both completely left the underworld. But Orpheus did, because that's a human nature. You just want to do whatever other try to not let you do. And Eurydice died again. Well, Orpheus wandered the world playing his mournful song until his death, and they meet in and Orpheus and Eurydice meet in the underworld. Well, the opera is slightly different from the myth because we know the myth have different versions. But anyway, Eurydice thought the reason why Orpheus doesn't want to look back at her is because he betrayed her. And Orpheus is kind of enough for that, so he did turns back. And Eurydice died. And he sings the world-famous aria Give a voice in the Eurydice, How Can I Live Without Eurydice? And the Amor, the god of love, was persuaded by him and saved Eurydice. Yay, happy ending! One of the most memorable thing is that this opera starts in the middle. The first thing is a chorus of gnomes and Zephyrus joins Orpheus around the top of Eurydice. So with its theme of love, loss, and redemption is universally resonant and has inspired numerous adaptations. Gluck's Orfeo and Eurydice is particularly notable for its integration of ballet and chorus, elements that reflect the influence of French opera and the ideas of reformers like Francisco Agurri and Jean-Georges Noverel. It is a nature-human expression that's most valuable in this opera. There are actually two versions of this opera. There's the Gluck's version with Orfeo singing by Castrato. If you don't know what is that that's a male singer without a body organ that produce male sex hormone, so that can basically keep themselves the characteristic before puberty. But there's also the 1859 Hector Berlioz version of mezzo-soprano. As you can see today, we have Anthony Rose Costanzo instead of any other mezzo-sopranos, so we are still using the Gluck's version if you aren't mistakenly recognize the group that Anthony belongs to. It is also a relatively new, or I should say modern production with some new creativity. We have a bunch of dead famous people sitting in the iron shell that looks exactly same like from Carmen. I mean, I'm not saying the people, but the shelf. Those people include Abraham Lincoln, Queen Elizabeth II, and that's all the so far all the people I recognize. I wish I will be famous enough so one day I can be part of those people after I die. Can they please add me to as a part of this production? And on the surface slash ground level, we have all the things happening. I must call this a large but small production. Let me explain. First, we have those famous people I mentioned. Because of those two large iron shelf pieces have to be moved at times, and they are heavy with a bunch of people on it. There are about 15 people on stage just pushing those shelves back and forward. In comparison of those old people, we have modern dancers dancing on the floor level. I can't identify the genre, but it is some sort of ballet. My friend, who is a classical dance major kid, doesn't like it much. But to be honest, because I see the unity and harmonies inside it, as the first sight, you might think it is kind of messy, but after putting it into the overall opera and takes it as a whole instead of parts, there's a beauty. My favorite dance is probably from the last act, where they are transacting from the external world back to the reality. I mean, back to the alive world, and people were cheering that Orpheus finally have Eurydice back. But instead of a complex opera that's composed of multiple matters, this is more like a solo opera where we can see Orpheus for the whole time in every single aria, and as a no intermission and over a 40-minute opera, the stage setting is basically the same. It's just how you move it around. And the orchestra is also relatively small compared to Fridays in Nino. I mean, last Fridays in Nino. But however, is a Baroque piece. So we have harpsichord and a Baroque orchestra. Another thing I would like to mention is that, Orpheus is a bard, so he must have a lute. But since this is a modern production, Anthony was a quotation mark playing a guitar. Why is it in quotation mark? Is because when Vialo, who plays Amora, was singing, we can see him tuning the guitar. And as I said before, I'm sitting in the first row. Did I mention this? But anyway, I was sitting in the first row, row A, and during the later part, you can see he wasn't playing the guitar at all. It doesn't make any sounds besides, the nails are in touch with the strings, and the harp is modeling all the guitar sounds. Another thing is that in Orpheus and Eurydice, they also use flying rope to deliver a violin in the first act. Well, and that's also her mad debut. As someone who's afraid of high, I must say she has such a courage to have your debut at this world's famous opera house and flying while singing your first aria here. I'm not too sure where did they connect the rope with her body, but anyway, flying while singing will definitely bring difficulties to the performance, and she handled it well. And a funny story, after the performance, there's the Q&A section, and the audience did ask about it. I mean, why don't you ask about it? So that she replied saying without feet on the ground is hard.
I sguardi trattieni, affrena gli accendi, la banda che vedi, che pochi momenti hai più da sai pur che talora confusi intrigati, fini d'amore, son ciechi di amanti, non sanno guardar. Confusi intriganti, son ciechi di amanti, fini d'amore, non sanno guardar. Con chi d'amore non sanno guardar, non sanno guardar.
That was Yellow singing the aria "Che sguardi titani", which is "Hold Your Gaze" in English, from the first act of Orpheus and Eurydice. Well, as I said before, it feels like a solo recital for Anthony because Ing, who plays Eurydice, comes out in the last act, and besides that, it was all Anthony singing, but Ing is actually a great singer, and it just feels nice when you see more Chinese singers appear to be in the Met. Another thing is that you can see her improvement. A few years ago, she used to sing in a different way. I can't find much recordings of her, otherwise I would like to make the comparison. But anyway, after she traveled to Europe and settled there, she changed the the technical aspect of her singing while maintaining the emotional values. She is also a nice person that I was too nervous to talk to her at the stage door, but she walks to me and I was like, wow. Okay, just to clarify, I'm not trying to be critical of any sense, but I just don't think Anthony is at his best level for this opera. Even though people was continuously clapping and shouting bravo after he finished Give Us and then Elucidity, and the conductor has to try to cover the audience sound, but personally saying, I don't think it deserves it. Because he gives way better performance of the same aria in his solo recital, and I believe there is a space for improvement. Uh, the sound that sounds a little bit heavy, so I must say he's probably a good singer. I mean, probably, but he could make himself at least a little bit sadder, not in a superficial way, but by leading the emotion hiding his voice. I think he seems to have a deliberately muffled in his voice, like act like he's sad, resulting in a very sharp dryness. The techno treatment of his voice is still good, especially when you see a pianissimo very quiet. He did it well enough to express it in a level.
E farò senza Eurydice, o andrò senza Eurydice. E farò, come andrò, e farò senza Eurydice. Dove andrò senza il mio bene?
Anyway, I just don't think is the best of him. Or am I being overly critical? I don't know. And another thing I'm pretty disappointed by Anthony's performance is every time the aria is on a mid-range note, it is just simply sounds awful. It's like dead and completely lackluster. Well, do I have anything to prove that? No, actually I don't because they didn't post anything about it. Anyway, that's another problem is that you can say Anthony and Ying, like, they act like a couple, but you can see Ying trying really hard to have the emotional interaction with her quotation mark husband, but Anthony is forever trying to avoid that. It results like they're two singers in a recital instead of like two singers in a opera. They just like how can I describe it? It's like they're too far away emotionally. And it made the final scene look very awkward, and the relationship between two of them seemed to me more like a straight person taking an interest in a gay man. Well, am I sounding really mean by that? And they have to be tied together by their jobs, and they're like totally apart. I don't have anything else to say, but if you are interested at the software itself, or you would like to see a corroboration of modern dance and opera, or you just simply want to be happy, sure, you can go see the opera. I mean, or you want to see a countertenor themed opera, just go. I believe you will still enjoy it, and it is on sale till early June. So thank you so much for listening. And as always, if you have any question, comment, or opinion on what I said, or just want to talk to me, please email olinatown@gmail.com. It is AULINDATANG@gmail.com. See you in my next episode. Well, I just realized I forgot to play the duet aria viene apaga e tuo console. So I'll post the link in the bio part. Oh yeah, if you like take a look at it, you'll understand what do I mean by they don't look together. But still, it was beautiful music and great singing and probably a great production. I don't know because it depends on your attitude towards like those modernization. But it's great. Anyway, bye.